All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Meghna. I'm an education consultant here at Aussizz Melbourne, and I welcome you all to this exciting session on tax information for international students. I'm sure a lot of us will have tons of doubts and misconceptions in this area, so this session can help us get clear and accurate information so that we can avoid these pitfalls. We are joined by Mr. Vikas Sood. He's a CPA and CFO of Pinnacle Advisory and Consulting Group and the Director of Taxos Accountants. With over 15 years of experience in key financial management roles, he's here to help students in planning a career in the financial services sector. He's also going to give us wonderful insights on the tax system in Australia and how to file our tax returns. Our expert will be waiting to take your questions, so please post your questions in the chat box and we'll get to them at the end of the session. We also have some exciting giveaways for our attendees. We want to take the session deep and interactive, and we encourage your questions and feedback. We are going to have some bumper cash prizes as well to claim for the ones who leave the most descriptive review under the Facebook post, for which I will put the link in the chat box shortly. So tag your friends and make as much noise as possible in the comment section if you want to win attractive giveaways. And the most participative audience member here is also going to get giveaways including free PTE coaching, IELTS coaching, PR consultation, and a lots more. So we encourage you all to come and be part of our summit. I'll now transfer
I have a
to
lot of questions to answer.
yes. So
All
I'll
right.
let you take over now, Vikas.
All right, let's begin. Look, good introduction. Meghna, thank you so much for summarizing my experience as such. Look, I thought, given that the audience is all the students that have come up here in Australia to study and make a career in finance and accounting, I'll divide this conversation or the presentation into two parts. The first part is basically telling you what the market is, what the job market is for accounting professionals, what are the career prospects, and how you sort of navigate your way through and pick up which career you want to go. Okay. And there may be sort of, things that you're very good at. So it'll just help you streamline your education towards the best possible scenario that you might go into. So that's the first part. The second part I'll discuss basically what are the tax rules for students? What are the different jobs that students will do while they're studying? What are the tax rules in that sense, and how the TFN works, how the GST rules work? What do you need in terms of getting started here, as well as maintaining your tax status correct, because there are some complexities in judging whether you can be a resident or a non-resident for tax purposes. So we'll go into all of that in the second half of the presentation. So first half, let me introduce you what are the different finance areas you could actually get a job in, and what is the market, the job market in Australia for accounting students. So let's just dig into it. Okay, so I'm presuming everybody can see the slides here. Awesome. Okay, so basically, I'm going to go through. First, let me just set it up correctly. Okay, so right. So first things, changing finance function and the career prospects in this industry. Look, very challenging industry, and there are a lot of opportunities within this profession. All you need to do is sort of get into and manage it from a. Okay, sorry, 1 second. I've got tech doing some stuff. So I'm going to go into what accounting is all about. So you need to understand when you are in Australia, what are the different areas that you need to work on? What are the different areas that you could actually get a job in or a career in? So what is traditional accounting? What is accounting basically there? What is happening in the market? So let's just go through a physical traditional accounting where you've got a ledger, you take a pen, you write your debits and you write your credits. That's basically what it's like, driving a car with a map in your hand and trying to find out, okay, where's Liverpool? Where is Broadmeadows? You're finding your suburb, you're driving the car and you've got the map in your hand. That's what accounting profession has been. So that is the starting of. Everybody is using manual stuff. You're putting up information in Excel, trying to generate financial statement from it. So that's basically how traditional accounting is supposed to be. The role has changed though. There is a lot happening in this profession. You don't come in as accounting students and you don't have to worry about spreadsheets anymore. There's so many different apps. There are so many different disruptors that have come in the form of technology that have changed the way accounting profession works. And the kind of accountants we need are very, very different now. So what was once the optimal means of processing data, spreadsheets, now seems very archaic, very risky, prone to human error. So what are we doing? Traditional accounting is over. So how do we move forward? Technology has come in, what it has done. It's brought automation of month end. Your systems are handled by ERPs. You don't have to do any calculations. The data matching automatically does that. There are systems like Xero, SAP. Basic systems have taken over and done all the processing work. Gone. We're not bean counters anymore. You don't have to sit at a desk and say, A, B, C, D. No, everything is done. What your job now is to interpret the data. How do you interpret? How do you make decisions out of that? So technology has changed the traditional accounting into a very, very modern, tech-driven, data-driven sort of economy. So how the accountants have to deal with it? They have to become strategic partners in the business. They have to interpret the data and help the company to understand the way forward. Okay, moving on. So there are two options that you've got. As a company, you either automate or you outsource the basic tasks that are there. Australian market, obviously the jobs are there. It's driven by technology, so it takes a little while for any of you new guys to come in and sort of start working and getting traction in the job market. Obviously, the job market needs you to have some sort of experience in the industry. You're coming in as a student. One thing is for sure, if you're tech savvy and you can communicate well, you can talk the numbers, there are a lot of opportunities, right? So you have to understand this slide is all about trying to understand what is happening in the market. What is a company looking for? What are they doing? So what they're doing is they're outsourcing all of the process driven tasks, either to Philippines or India or any of the countries which they find a cheaper option. You know how much percentage difference? There's around 60 to 70% difference in cost. And these countries do have a lot of talent and the people are so tech savvy there. So there is that option that companies are using. The second option they're using is they're automating everything that is process driven. If you can draw up on a flowchart, make an app, get it done, dust it. Even if you have to do a customized app, that's not hard. All the process driven tasks are standardized, unified, and they're gone. So what will the accountants do? That's something that we have to understand by understanding the key roles that are available and what is left for us. Okay. As I said before, outsourcing 70% costs, huge cost savings, and elimination of the hiring process. If you outsource, unfortunately, no more HR required, and HR is not going to like it, but that's a fact. That's a changing dynamics in this industry. Okay, the key roles that are being outsourced are tax work, bookkeeping, payroll, virtual assistants, and the compliance side of things. Okay, so what is happening? What are you going to do if you study accounting? What are you going to do? All I'm going to say here is that make sure when you're doing any of the courses, make sure you familiarize yourself within the industry with what is happening. You're tech savvy, make sure you understand the different systems that are involved. Yes, you have to understand law. The application of that law is way more important than actually doing that. So make sure you understand about automation, you're tech savvy. Also understand big data. We talk about big data a lot. nowadays within finance and accounting. Whenever I go to a CPA seminar or a CFO seminar, all they talk about is big data. They talk about how the accountants are best placed to actually interpret the data into meaningful information and actually help the business make decisions, day-to-day decisions, cost-saving decisions, reporting decisions, analysis decisions, whatever, where to invest, what not to do as well. So very, very important for you guys to understand that the market is not just wanting you to do tax work or wanting you to do basic debits and credits. That's all done machine work. That's all gone, automated already. So what you need to do is bring in the analysis, interpretation of big data. You have to be able to present your data. So develop the soft skills that are required for your key stakeholders. Very, very important. Those soft skills are very important. If your communication is good, you can actually go into any role, even a research research analyst. All you need to do is research a certain set of data, make a report, make the key stakeholders understand that report. When you're making the key stakeholders understand that report, you know what are you using? You're using your soft skills, your presentation skills. So accounting is no more about sitting on the desk. It's about getting in the front to be able to make an impact on the decision makers. So this profession, you need to be the true business partners. You're going to be now doing budgeting. You're now going planning. You're doing systems. You're interpreting data. That's the role. So that's why this slide's all talking about the changing function. So when you're entering into a profession like that, just bear in your mind the challenges that you'll face. All right. Okay. So as I said before, I'm just saying same thing in a very concise manner, saying that something needs to shift. Your technical skills, not enough. Commercial, social skills is the mandate going forward, and all the businesses need similar skills from you. Okay. So now this slide basically tells you what are the different type of roles available. So if you go in as a student or as a startup or anything that you want to do in the stream, there is no typical bookkeeper roles anymore. You know why they are not? Um, they're not there because 80% is outsourced or automated. So what do you do as an accountant? So entry level roles are very different now. They are research roles. You have to do a bit of commercial analysis. You need to do project accounting. Um, Bookkeeping roles, all gone. Zero ERPs that have come in. NetSuite, there's a range and a bundle of them. They've made bookkeeping a piece of cake. So you don't have to spend that much time. Analyst roles in the commercial space are growing like anything. If you're focused on public accounting, look, tax is an interesting place to start. But bear in mind that tax work is also automated to an extent. The fact of the matter is there are so many softwares that help you not actually do the tax return, but help you understand the mechanics. But that's what we'll do in the second half of this discussion. But the main key thing is that you have to decide which area you want to go in, right? In the commercial space, the roles are corporate finance roles, commercial finance roles, financial accounting, forensic accounting. That's an interesting addition to accounting profession. In the last 5-7 years, we've seen this role come up really well and a lot of opportunities in this. Risk analysis, solvency is a big one as well. So you have to decide whether you want to go into public practice and private practice, but the key roles that are available for a person who's starting out is an analyst role. I think that's a good start in the commercial space. In a tax space, you could actually start with a tax consulting role. The way to do it is HR and Block does some courses for you that you could actually start up with, or you can go and work with a startup that do offer tax services. Again, tax is again all about soft skills. It's not about doing the tax return. It's about developing and understanding your client, developing relationship and understanding the client's key pain points and work from there. That is the change that is happening. right? Okay. So, but then so many options are available for you. Which one do you pick up? How do you decide what's good for you, what's not good for you? So what I've done here is I've given you 5 key sectors that you potentially could go in. What are the good points about it? What are the bad points? What are the pros? What are the cons of going? So public accounting, for example, um, public accounting, you've got KPMG, Deloitte, the big fours that are basically doing everything in the public space, which is for the larger or the medium companies. Okay, they're dominating the whole market. But then there are millions of small firms that are doing like huge number, but their turnovers are quite limited to the area, to the expertise they're working on. For example, some firms work for tradies, some firms do only IT businesses, some firms work with startups only. So there are a number of them, but the domination in terms of getting results and doing the high-end work, the complex IPOs, that stays with the big four. Okay, the benefit is great paying salary, um, very diverse clients. You'll learn a lot of stuff if you enter into one of the big fours, the Deloittes and the KPMGs. Uh, Obviously, life's not easy. It's stressful. Your salary starting is very low. Well, not anymore. Since COVID, I think the big four are also struggling to keep talent. So you may get a good role now. If you're studying it, make sure you do join the graduate programs and go through the whole process of doing the interviews with PwC and all of that. I think they've got a different way of interviewing now. They do a lot of interviews, pre-screening, and then they video interviews and all that. Please, if you're going for public accounting, Big Four is a great place to start. The only thing is that they're not specialized. They'll put you in an area and they'll pigeonhole you in that area. So be ready for a lot of stress, right? If you're into that and you've got the hours and no other commitments, definitely could start. The thing is that once you've done a couple of years of big four, your next job, very, very easy. You'll get a lot of money for that as well as compared to the big four. Your experience is valued by smaller firms a bit more than if you're working in a private company, private accounting firm, right? Again, private accounting has its own goods and bads. You get high salary, but it's again very stressful. The hours are long. The client exposure again is limited to single area. The third area that you could actually go in, this is my favorite because um, financial service industry is really untapped, very competitive for grad roles. But if you get in something like that, it's very interesting. It's very diverse. You know why? For example, superannuation. If you get into a super role, look how exciting it is to work with trillions of dollars of money that has been invested into the financial sector. You could actually get a fund manager role. You could start managing the managed fund. You have to understand different set of uh, um, skills are required to enter into this industry. So credit analysts, they work with the bank, but the options for them are limited in terms of understanding the whole 360-degree understanding of the profession as an accounting. But in the area of credit, they become really strong. They understand a lot of different keywords, how the industry works, and then you can move on to fund management and the likes, right? Um, the fourth and the fifth area relies in healthcare and the government sector. Look, healthcare, there is a lot of work in the billing side of things. You could become a revenue manager. The bad point about that is that because it's manual, there is a lot happening to outsource that. And people are doing a lot of jobs virtually. So that is still it's now in threat after the COVID as well, because healthcare has realized that the groundwork, the billing work, they're not going to worry about it. They're just going to outsource it. So that sector, not very, bearish on it or bullish on it. I'm not going to comment on whether good or bad, but the risks are right there. In the government sector, again, great demand for tech roles. So when I say tech roles, you are basically an analyst for them. And that means you could enter into a typical either into a typical accounting role or you go into finance from there. But the problem with that is their openings are very limited. So you have to keep your eyes and ears open, subscribe to everything that, um, the job boards, the government job boards, make sure you act really, really quickly. And the hiring process will take months. So that's something that you got to think of. All right, so just quickly give you a wrap in trying to, introduce this. So we've realized that the skills required in this profession are quite different than it was 10, 15 years back, given the outsourcing and technology disruption. And COVID, for example, has not helped in terms of getting the jobs here. So the good thing is that the roles have changed, but there's plenty available. Bookkeeper may not be the key role that is going to get you entry. An accounts receivable may not be the role that's going to give you an entry into any of the big companies or the smaller, wherever you want to work in, whether it's public or private. You'll need a different skill set in your resume. So make sure when you're making your resume, when you're working with any company, you develop your analytical skills. You work on your soft skills. Make sure you dress appropriately. Your communication skills are top notch. You you are the one that can collaborate with anyone. It's very important. You're able to highlight in your interview that you can actually work in teams. Why I'm saying that, because if you work in any sector, whether it's private or public, there there are highly likely chances that 20, 30, 40% of their work is outsourced. The management team consists of different people from different cultural backgrounds. So you cannot stick to the community that you think you can do that. I'm bringing it out that if you really want to make a difference in the profession, you've got to be able to work with diverse people and be able to work in a team. Yes, right. Third thing I want to say is that make sure you try and get upfront while you're close to finishing, while you're studying, try and get some volunteer work, raise your hand. And there are many boards, job boards available, or even if you are an associate member of CPA or IPA, you can actually put yourself out there for volunteer work. And there are a lot of people, a lot of smaller practices that will give you that exposure for a base wage or an allowance of some sort. Or there are a lot of companies that work as a volunteer. Close to the tax time, you'll see a lot of people are hiring volunteers to help people who cannot afford to pay for the tax returns. And as a volunteer, there are some organizations that help. So don't be shy. Work in the volunteer sector. Try and showcase that you've got this interest in this particular sector and showcase your work. That is very, very strong in your resume while you're building it. And again, as I said before, I'm just summarizing it now. Make sure your relationship with technology and the systems is very strong. Now, systems, obviously, I understand if you haven't worked on some project, how do you know that? Well, again, you've got volunteer work, you've got raise your hand. There are a lot of people willing to help you if you raise your hand in time. And start applying for grad roles. Pick up your interest area, decide what you want to do, public or practice or private practice or commercial roles. If you want to be an analyst, make sure you attend those seminars, get in front of those companies, go hand in hand, showcase your skills. Even if you're in uni or something, do a project. When I say a project is raise your hand, create a community of people and go to companies and pitch and tell them that this is what you're doing as a Melbourne Uni graduate. You form a group of people who are like-minded, want to work in certain profession, make a group of them, 20 of them, go and then sell yourself as a group. And and I've seen these kind of strategies work so well, and people have landed roles. So it's your career. You got to come in front and make sure what's required to be done. You do that. Okay. These are some of the slides that I've used and some of the references that I've used to prepare this. And thank you very much for the first one. Okay, so keep posting your questions if you have any. I will try and get to them as we go along. Now the most coveted area, tax. Everybody wants to know about tax, so let's just talk about tax. Although it's not a very interesting or very intense topic, if you like, but let's get into the tax side of things. Okay, so you all ready to have some fun? Tax is fun, man. It's fun for me. I don't know about you. Okay. IT, can you help me to sort of increase the size of it? Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so I thought today we'll just go through the basic fundamentals. What is required? What do you want to know? You've come in here, you have no idea how Australian taxation works. What do you need to do? How do I do my tax return? Do I even need to file a tax return? You don't know. So obviously you've come in here, you're going to work somewhere, and you'll need certain things. Okay, so let's see. So what are we going to talk about? So we're going to talk about what is a tax file number? What do we need one? What is it? What is it? It's a reference number. Who uses that number? What is going to happen? Okay, that's the first thing. Then we talk about what is an Australian business number. Who needs it? When do you need it? What are the implications? What are the different people who've got access to it? Different government organizations that can actually look it up. And third, we're going to talk about GST, which is basically a sales tax. Now, many of you, it may or may not apply, but once you've got an ABN and then there's certain criteria you fit in, you will need to get GST registration. Fourth thing, we're going to talk about residency. I've seen there's some confusion in the students saying that, oh, I don't understand what do you mean by residency for tax purposes because I'm not a resident. Well, when we talk about residency under tax law, there are certain rules that apply. Once those rules apply, we are considered resident for tax purposes. Okay, you may not be resident from a visa perspective yet, which is the goal anyhow for all of you. But for tax purposes, the government doesn't want to miss out on getting tax from you because you're working. So they form these rules. And the last thing is for working students, there's certain tax deductions that are available. We will also talk about different areas students are working in. I mean, we've got a time constraint, but I'll try and get on to most of these slides and I'll try to summarize as much as I could. The certain rules we sort of have to look at individually based on your personal circumstances, but here we are. So tax file number, basically, I'll just run through first quickly, it's called the personal reference number. It's a 9-digit number, and it's basically yours for life. You've got it. It's not going to change for the entire time you stay here or entire time you work here. Even if you move into state, you go overseas, that number remains the same. It's a 9-digit number. It's linked to your wherever you go for work. You have to give your employer your TFN number, otherwise you will not be given an employment contract. So very, very important. We can apply online and it's pretty quick. It generally takes a few days to come through. But once you've got it, you are going to give it to your employer and you're set to get a wage or money in your account. Okay. Now, what is Australian business number? Now, there are some professions in Australia which require you to have an ABN. The likes of a taxi or a cab driving or Uber driving. If you're a contractor, if you're a cleaning contractor, some of the cleaning companies don't hire staff, they give contracts. So for that purpose, if you're working in those kind of industries where a contract is given, there's a contractual obligation, you'll need to quote an ABN. So how do I get an ABN? ABN, oh my God, that's another layer. Yes, it is another layer, but it's required to be outside, or it's not going to replace your tax file number. In other words, it's basically required to interact with all the offices that are involved with you. For example, the tax office, any other agency you need to deal with, you'll need to refer or quote your ABN. You have to raise an invoice to your I wouldn't say employer, but to the company that you work with, you still need your ABN. You need to quote that on the invoice. So that's ABN. So tax file number is your identification number. ABN is your business number, which unique to you is actually in addition to your tax file number, right? And you can register online. They don't charge you anything for it. If you don't understand the intricacies, your tax agents are always there to sort of guide you through the process. Whether you need an ABN or not, it depends on your individual circumstances. But in hindsight, I think if you're doing contractual work, you need an ABN. That's end of story. Okay. Okay, so what are the different taxes the government collects from you? One of the taxes is the goods and services tax. I think most people in India will know that. I think it's used to be called VAT and then called sales tax, and now it's called GST. So typically 10% on most goods and services that are consumed in Australia. That's the rule. We have to pay tax. Okay. And not everybody has to register. So this is something that you need to understand, because if you're below 75,000, you do not need to register for GST. Now, taxi drivers and hairdressers are an exception. They may have to register even if they're below, but at the end of the day, through the input tax credit scheme, you'll get most of the expenses paid back. I won't go into much detail here, but there are certain industries like taxi, Uber driving, Olas and all that, they have to register for GST. Whatever you collect from your customer, 10% of that is GST component, irrespective of how much total annual sales you're going to make. But for any other businesses that does not form part of that exception group, your turnover is below 75, you don't need GST. Or it's optional for you. You may need GST, you may want to opt in if your purchases are going to be more, and you're going to miss out a lot on getting the input tax credit. Again, not going into the intricacies of each of them, but high level for you guys, for the audience that we are, you only need to register when you hit 75,000 plus in a year. Otherwise, for a normal industry, you don't need to register for GST. And GST registration is not done by TFN holders. It's if you're working on a TFN and not quoting your ABN, you don't need it. Okay. All right. So these are the different taxes that I spoke about before. So what are the different registrations you have to do to start your life here? First thing I would say, get your TFN straight away when you enter Australia so that you don't have any issues starting out. And if you need an ABN, make sure the industry is right. You need an ABN, you do contract work. Make sure you understand you need GST or no. Just do that analysis work with your employer or your contractor for that matter, right? So this is 2021-22. So you're going to be charged nothing on 18,200, and then there is a slab that goes in and decides where and how much is the total amount that you'll have to pay. But these are the thresholds for 21-22 to just summarize. Again, I won't go into calculating a certain example for you. I think you're all sane enough to get into it through a tech product, and it'll be very, very simple. So I'm not going to do that for you. I'm not going to bore you more further. The topic itself is quite interesting. Okay. All right, let's get a bit pumped up on understanding whether you're a resident or not resident. So you've seen the thresholds. Now we need to understand what is residency. Okay. There are 3 tests we need to do to understand whether we are a resident for tax purposes. Okay. First thing is the resides rule, and then the domicile or the 183 rule, and then the super rule. We'll study these rules in detail just to have a good understanding that whether as a student, am I a resident for tax purposes or I'm not a resident for tax purposes, right? Okay, this slide, it talks about backpacker tax a little bit. Why I wanted to mention it here was your typical thresholds are right here. But for backpackers, we've got a special deal. The government realizes the people who are on working holiday visa 417 and 462 are not considered residents. So right away, they have said holiday visas not to be taxed as normal residency threshold tax rules. They're going to be special. So what is special? Up to 45,000, they're just getting a 15% withholding, and that's it. I think most people stay here, but if you overstay, you obviously fall into the 32.5 cents category. But I think you get a big benefit here because you're staying as a backpacker. I think it's pretty good. If you compare, you actually get better rates here. Okay. So let's go through one by one. What are the different tests that are required? Now, I understand most of you will fall into this category and will need to understand whether you're a resident for tax purposes or no. One simple rule I always tell is that if you're here, you've got a lease, you're staying here and studying here, and you're going to get a job, you're a resident. Okay, straight up, it's residency. For example, why I say that is because, okay, if you're studying here, you're obviously studying 1 year, 2 year, 3 year courses, which means your stay is more than 183 days in a year, you are falling into this category. Then the second, one of the factors that actually helps you decide is why is here? You're here for study. Okay. What is the purpose of your presence? What is the intention to stay here, to get a residency, you know, become permanent residents or citizens or whatever. You've got employment here, you're a resident. You're actually buying a car here, you're actually servicing your car, you've actually got a second car, your wife is also working, your kids are studying in the school. Well, you're a resident. So these are the typical resides test, basically tells you what is the purpose of you being here. Simple thing, if you're entering Australia, you're a migrant or whatever, if your intention is to study, or you're a tourist, but your intention or purpose of presence is clearly determined by your purpose. So that's it, you're here. That first rule is decided by whether you're a resident here. You reside here, you're a resident, right? How do you apply that? Okay, let's take one example and that'll help you understand. So Jay enters into Australia for 1st of 2020, international student. He's studying for 2 years. So what do you think? Australian resident for tax purposes or no? Look, he's staying more than 183 days to start off. He works and earns income. Second, that's it. Once your intention and your purpose is here and it's over 183 days, you'll be considered residents and you pass the residency test and will be considered resident for tax purposes. Okay, that's very, very important. On the other hand, this is a little bit complex scenario where Peter enters into Australia in Jan 2020 for 6 months. He wants to stay here for 10 to 12 years, but his visa is going to expire in 6 months and he's not allowed to stay further in Australia. Now, is he a resident or no? Now, in this scenario, it is quite evident that the intention of the immigration is not there to keep him here. It's the transitory nature and the intended short duration of stay, meaning that he will generally not be considered an Australian resident for income tax purposes, right? And the reason primarily from a very high level is that he's restricted visa condition, right? That is not going to make him an Australian, so he can actually, he'll actually be taxed in a foreign country when, even if he earns income here, he'll be taxed in a foreign country. Okay. So hence this rule's been come in as the 183-day rule. An individual will be considered an Australian resident for tax purposes if he has a domicile in Australia. So what decides if you've got a domicile in Australia? If your place of abode is outside Australia, you will not be considered resident because you don't live here and you don't have any intention to do it here. You know, you have to consider a lot of rules before you understand what domicile means. Okay, if you're in Australia, well, you're here. If you're living in Australia, well, you're here, you've got a lease, you've got a rent, you're paying rent, you're here. And you're here more than 183 days, your domicile test is satisfied. Okay. Even if you live outside but you've got a place here and you've been here more than 183 days and you live 100 days somewhere else, you'll still be considered passing the domicile test and you'll be a resident, right? Okay. The third is pretty straightforward. If you've got a superannuation here, somebody is paying on your behalf at the public sector superannuation scheme, you've hired, you're a member of that, you'll be considered resident, and that's basically you're working for the government or something. So basically, superannuation test just adds on to the first two tests and shows that if you work here, so you're receiving super here, you will be considered resident for tax purposes. Okay. So some people ask me, there are a lot of students ask me this, hey, I'm a temporary resident, my visa is going to expire. If I've got a 457, I've got no issues, I shouldn't be paying tax because I'm not a resident. Well, there's a difference between a resident and a resident for tax purposes. So temporary resident doesn't mean that you're not a resident for tax purposes. So you need to understand. But who's a temporary resident? So let's just say, what are the different categories for people who are on temp residence? Okay, so 457 visas are temporary visas, and obviously these people are called, people in this category are called temporary residents because there is a condition on their visa. The people who are unable to claim social security benefits like the Medicare, and they can't do that, obviously will be considered as part of that. Okay, and if you don't have the permanent residency, you're temporary resident. If your spouse is unable to claim benefits, you're temporary resident. So need to understand that these aspects of residency that are being talked about is only for tax purposes. It doesn't hold any relevance to the visa. Okay, when we say resident for tax purposes, we're saying you'll be taxed in this country for wherever you work in, right? Okay. Now, what do you pay tax on? You pay tax on income. You reduce the deductions. Whatever is left, you have to pay tax on. Tax slab threshold, we've already discussed. I'm not going to calculate, but I'm going to give you a snapshot of how it looks like. So when you actually going to do your tax return, these item numbers will come in on the form or online or e-tax, so whatever you use. First things you're going to ask you, salaries and wages. So you have to pick up what are you doing in terms of PAYG. You have to go to TFN to your employer. Your employer will give you a pay slip. On that pay slip, you'll have your wages. That number will be pre-filled for you when you log on to the ATO portal. If you're doing it by yourself, that's what's going to happen. That figure will come. You ensure that figure matches with your pay slip. Right? Second is if you're getting allowances and tips and direct fees. So when I say allowances, there could be multiple allowances that come under. Could be, people in different industries get different allowances. So, for example, if you're working as a security guard, you're probably getting a first aid allowance. So you might be getting an allowance for the kind of, there are different levels that you receive, levels-based allowances as well. So there's multiple allowances that will come in item number 2. Employer lump sum payments. Now, this could be handshakes. This could be lump sum payments that you receive. I won't go into details because many of you probably don't fall into this category, but there could be lump sum payments that your employer has paid you at the end of your, or within, as a commission or whatever. The ATO will pick up that and automatically pre-fill for you if it's paid through your employer's payroll. So you don't have to do nothing, but you have to understand what that means. There are multiple ways that you are terminated. Employment termination payments. It could be, you've resigned. You get the final pay. That final pay may have termination payments, like 4 weeks notice period. They pay you cash because you didn't want to work, or you had some annual leave. They pay you cash. So these come under item 4, and they'll be taxed in a different way based on your age. If you're 45 plus, you probably get in hand than taxed. So you will see these items categorized when you pre-fill. Then there is allowances and payments. Look, in COVID environment, there may be certain payments that have been paid through to you, and they might come in item 5. Now they may or may not be taxed in your income, but these items are the key items that you'll say you need to fill in. If you're using online, or you need your tax agent to help you, it's a pretty straightforward exercise in terms of first 5 categories. Most of it is pre-filled. But if there's any mistake, you've got to raise your hand, and 𝐬𝐞𝐬𝐢 can fix it for you once you've called them or you've used your agent to help you out. Continuing with income, the pensions, look, you won't fall into any of that as well. So I'm just going to skip that for time constraint. Annuities and superannuation income streams also come tax-free after 60. Well, yeah, God forbid. If we have to study at 60, it will be a problem. So I'm going to skip that too. Superannuation lump sum payments. Obviously, these payments, it's good to understand what's happening here. When you hit age 60 and all, there is a tax-free component that is allowed to be withdrawn from your super. And it's given periodically, and that just comes lump sum here every year when you do your taxes. But that's just the tax-free component, because when you pay super, 15% tax is deducted on your super straight away. And the rest is paid into your superannuation account. When you hit 60, 65, there is again thresholds when you can start withdrawing it. It keeps changing every year. 𝐸𝐴TO obviously wants you to work more years before you can withdraw your super, which is hard work for me. I already feel the pain in my back, but nevertheless, this environment, you have to keep working. So that's where we are with this. Low rate cap. Now, I won't go into superannuation. This is a big exercise we got to do. Okay, this item is actually important. Some of people working in contractual roles with an ABN, they may fall into this income category called the personal services income. Professional practitioners, some of the CPA firms, or sole practitioners, the small tax agents or small, even the migration agents are running their own practice on their own, they will fall into this category as well. They'll be called the sole practitioner. They will be personal services income. They'll be not that they're going to be taxed a bit higher, but 𝐸𝐴TO wants to know the PSI income separate. The reason for that is there are not many deductions that you can get when you're doing a PSI, other than office use and basic deductions. So got to be wary about that. So I thought I'll raise that. The last 2 items, well, there's another 12 too. If you earn interest, even if you've got a bank account, you get $20, $10, that'll come through automatically through the pre-fill. And all the joint account interest, children accounts, everything will come into item 10. Any dividends you paid also comes in here. If you own shares and you pay dividends, whether franked or unfranked, will all come in here in this category. Employee share schemes. Look, a lot of employers are doing these benefit schemes these days. Instead of paying you a commission, they say, well, we're going to give you shares at a discounted price. Again, that's an area that will require another presentation on itself. So I'm not going to go into details, but if you have employee share schemes, this is the item you'll be getting that income through. So basic deductions that are available to you as if you're working in different industries. Normally industries that people think are very, very dear to the students could be, you could work at a car wash, you could drive an Uber, you could become a taxi driver, Uber driver, Uber Eats. You could actually work in the local restaurants, you could bars and whatever not. So anything you can get your hands on that gives you stable week in, week out job that works with your uni, that's all you're going to do. Okay, so deductions are important. So any trade you get into, there's certain deductions that are allowed. So I say it very simply. If you're doing a job and while doing that job, you have to incur some expenses, they are generally considered deductible. Now, one of the general rules is if you go from your home to work, that's not a deduction. If you spend $20 on a cab getting from home to work, that's not a deduction. But if you buy shoes to, work, the tougher shoes, you need it for, so as a concreter, you need them. Protected clothing, yes, definitely, they're allowed. Anything that helps and assists you in getting your job done, allowed as a deduction. So if you're studying accounting and you took a membership for CPA Australia and you wanted to do another course that's going to take your current job to the next level, no, obviously, if you spend 10,000 on it, that's allowed. You can spend 10,000 on it as long as you can build the relationship between the deduction that you are claiming versus the work you're doing. If there is no correlation, like if you're doing an accounting job and doing a nursing course, I'm sorry, that's two different things. I can't allow that as a deduction. So it is going to say no, no. Whereas if you're working as a nurse and then you've got another course that you're going to uplift you to become, I don't know, level 2 nurse or better nurse, or in a certain area, get specialization in a certain area, definitely allowed. Yes. So this basic fundamental rule you have to think about when you are putting your deductions. Please do not put whatever you've spent on certain things, and then you guys have to come in and say, hey, I claim too much, or I bought a car, I claim the whole thing. When you can't claim the whole thing because you can only claim the expenses of the car that you're using for work, not your personal. So you need to understand that relationship between deduction and the work you do, right? Very high level. I'm not going to go into the ATO language, but I'll read it for you. But hindsight, that's exactly summarizing what I said. So losses are outgoings deductible to the extent to which they are incurred in gaining or producing assessable income. Anything that you have incurred as an expense to produce income is deductible. That is, or it is necessarily incurred in carrying on a business for such purpose. Like you have no choice. For example, if you're working in a car park and you've got 10 different car parks to go to in a day, and you've been given your own car to drive around, you can actually go site on site and claim all the expenses, the maintenance, kilometers, and whatever not, for that you have used in traveling to those 10 sites, because you have to go there to produce income. That is for the sole purpose of producing income. There is no other reason why you're driving to those sites. Yes. And if you're driving from home to the first site, that's not allowed. So, and from the last site, when you finish, you go traveling home, that's not allowed. So anything that is of personal nature puts aside. Anything that's capital nature goes aside. Now, there is an exception to this. Say, for example, if you've got a car that you bought specifically for the purpose of doing your business, given some of the impairment depreciation rules, you could actually depreciate a whole lot by June 2022. But that's something that your tax professional will advise you depending on your personal situation, right? Okay. So this is just what I said. There's two methods available for car expenses. If you're eligible to do that, you have to do logbook or cents. My favorite is cents. Logbook method is a bit like, again, don't quote me on that. A certain person may be getting more bang for their buck or more deduction using the cents method. The other one might from the logbook method. It all depends on how many Ks, what type of car, and a whole lot of work situations, right? But typically 2 rules to calculate, right? Second deduction you'll see they will ask you is online is that, hey, can I claim work-related travel expenses? You can, but you have to understand that they have to be work-related, right? Just make sure you don't do any personal. So public transport, yes. again, in traveling from work site to work site. If you're traveling to go to Canberra to meet a client, yes, of course, that's a business expense. If you're traveling in different areas, you have to go there to meet your clients or whatever not. Anything incidental is also allowed. Again, you have to keep record. Make sure you get your invoices. Make sure all the documents are there. That if there is a query, you are able to prove that relationship between your work and expense, right? Key thing again here is the connection, right? Okay, and then we go into the clothing. I've already told you that there is certain rules in terms of, and they've got caps on how much you can claim. So you make sure you understand those caps, or you could get your accountant to sort of list them for you. There's pretty much two rules here in dry cleaning, and then I think there's a certain cap on certain type of businesses that you can claim your clothing up to. Beyond that, it's not considered a deduction. I mean, you can't spend so much, $6,000 on protective clothing. So they've capped it to a few numbers that we'll talk about in the next one. Okay. So this one is about self-education. Now, just ensuring that work-related expenses, travel expenses, or car expenses are separate. And this one is very separate. So if you do self-education, you're doing to receive a college recognized or a course that is actually linked to your current profession, you can claim that. Okay. Right. Any professional courses that you've done. Okay. First 250 is obviously non-deductible, but I think once we get the royal assent, which is going to pass this in June 2022, they're going to pass this bill where they've said this non-deductible $250 is going to be removed. I think that'll be removed. So I'm hoping for that to happen. And then just exclude the education courses provided by professional associations. Like, you need to understand that they are incurred to receive an education from a college. You have to just make sure that they're in relation to your income. That's the key rule. And anything that you spend on top, computers and all of that, they're all allowed to be self-education, and you can claim a deduction for that. Okay. Okay. And what other deductions that you can claim? Again, union fees, overtime meals, professional seminars. I do a lot of CPA seminars, and I claim that as a deduction for professional improvement and all that. So yeah. Now, this is the big one for 2021, and there was a lot of calculations and benefits given to 2021 people who wanted to work from home. I think that will be available in 21-22 as well, because many people haven't really hit the CBD yet, and they're still working from home. So good luck to us getting back to work. I'm sure that forms a big part of calculation of work-related expenses, but I'm looking forward from ATO to get our new rules for 21-22 to see what they're offering now. Okay. Now this is tricky. Interest and dividend deductions. So make sure these are not this interest is not on your credit card. Okay, you just can't say that, hey, I spent that money on my credit card, I paid interest, so I'm going to have a deduction. No. Again, you have to ensure that there is a relationship between your work and the expense. This is if there is an expense to earn your assessable income from interest, yes, of course, you can. It could be, a share that you put on a loss, or any deduction that in terms of borrowing the money to buy shares or something, you incurred interest. Yes, you can claim it. Any other investment accounts that you've got that actually help you earn some income, and you have to pay some interest to earn that income, that is deductible. That is basically it. So if you hire a team from tax office to do your taxes, yes, you can hire us, and then whatever deduction is there, you will be you could actually claim in the next year's tax return. Okay, that's pretty much the tech stuff. There are a lot of other items that are there. You may or may not need to sort of get involved at this stage because of you've got a pretty simple, straightforward tax return in terms of where you are. But do look at Medicare. Medicare is, if you're an international student, not applicable. You have your own insurance, health insurance that is not allowed to be deducted. So make sure don't put that in. Oh, I can claim. No, you can't. You cannot. You're not. Obviously, you're not charged any Medicare levy or surcharge, but you cannot claim your private health cover or anything that you've got. Right. I'm going to go into threshold. So that's me. If you need help, give us a call. Your emails are here, numbers are here. I think I've crossed my time and have gone far off. No, I'm okay. All right, I finished in time. That's brilliant. Any questions? Happy to answer if there's anything that comes up.
Right. So I don't think there are many questions because maybe because you were already so thorough and you explained everything in a lot of detail. I just want to say thank you everyone who attended the session, and a particular thank you to Vikas for being so generous with all the information. Please don't forget to leave reviews on how insightful this experience was for you. The chat box has the link for you to do that. And once again, thank you very much. And this summit all this interesting, and I hope you guys gain some value from it. Thank you.
Everyone for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sood.